everybody. Resume share.
I think you just need to press that slider next, and it should go full screen and should then be good. And then the slider on the left as well.
Oops. Oh dear. Hang on. Just change my thing. Okay. Is that ready, Lisa?
Yeah, good.
Okay.
I think it's now good. If someone doesn't see, just send a text via chat. But I think it should be fine now.
Okay. Right. Good morning, everybody, or good evening for those of you that are staying up late to watch the webinar. So thank you for joining. As Lisa said, my name's Cindy Shawley. I am a nurse by background and 35 years as a midwife. And as Lisa said as well, I'm a complete advocate of TENS from my student days, so very early on in my career. I'm currently a midwifery lecturer and I'm also the lead for quality improvement. So for me, my whole passion is about improving care for mums and babies. So really important to me that when we're using TENS for labour and birth and afterwards, that I make sure that the women have all of that information and opportunities to use. So to start off with maternity, the vision for our maternity services really focuses on our women and giving them choice and control and promoting normality. Really, really important for us, and empowering them to make their own choices about their care in labour and birth. And this is a massive, massive focus now. So we're doing a lot of what we call co-production and using our service users to improve our service and make changes. So for me, I'd used TENS for a long time and decided when I was doing my clinical doctorate that I really wanted to investigate why women were using TENS and what it really was, the in-depth knowledge of what it was about TENS that they liked, or that they didn't, but particularly they liked. So for me, in my research, TENS was recognised as being a part of a wider strategy, so for the maintenance of controlled in labour of a normal birth for women, and that was absolutely key. So the aim of the session, I split it into sort of two parts here, is firstly to look at my research, and hopefully you'll find that interesting, and the findings in context with TENS use in labour and birth, and then to look at the practice in the UK and particularly how I've used it. Some of it you'll recognise, but we might give you some ideas of how to use it slightly differently. So the importance for women is actually normalising birth. C-section rates are really quite high, and possibly not as high as other countries, but we really want to decrease that, promote normality and normal birth. So women really want things that are non-invasive, TENS particularly being mobile, they can keep upright, it's drug-free, lots of women don't want drugs, and actually it's so important that they can control their pain relief themselves. So I'm going to start with the first part, which is the research findings. So my research study was called Women's Experience of TENS for Pain Controlled in Labour. And for me, once I started the research, we already knew that TENS was non-invasive, mobile, self-controlled pain relief for women. It was used extensively in the UK, but when women were asked about TENS, they used it favourably and said they'd use it again, but we really didn't know why they were saying that. So currently the available research on TENS didn't really look at qualitative experiences, so women's experiences of TENS for labour and birth. And my study really seeks to redress that balance, so to add to the quantitative research out there. So to put it sort of more in context, my study wanted to explore and really understand and interpret women's in-depth experiences when using TENS. So I got a massive amount of really, really rich data from talking to women. the current research out there, as we said, it says women like TENS, but why? Why did they like TENS? So that was my question. It became evident through searching the literature that, as I say, there were so many women out there using it, but the research TENS being devised in a laboratory by scientists was mainly quantitative. So my study investigated why women chose TENS, why they found it helpful for pain control, and why they wanted to use it again. So women's experiences were really the focus, and all about women and why they wanted to use TENS. And it also provided evidence for our future practice, for our education, for women and for midwives actually, and further research possibilities. So my research was about interviewing women face-to-face, one-to-one, and interpreting the findings of what they were saying and how they used TENS for pain control in labour. And it actually was a real education for myself, to be honest. So my research study was qualitative. I did a worldwide literature review, so I looked at every single piece of TENS research out there. My interviews, as I say, 20 interviews. I got between 20 and 35 typed pages of in-depth information from women. And I asked a very open question about, tell me about your experiences of using TENS in labour. And as I say, they were all face-to-face, one-to-one. They were recorded. And I transcribed all of the interviews myself so that I could immerse myself completely in the data to think about what was happening with those women. So the women were purposely selected onto the TENS study of mine after they'd used TENS in labour. So they weren't selected beforehand. So women used TENS and then opted to join the study and be interviewed. So I didn't affect anything before. They didn't know that this was going to happen unless they agreed to it. So I used IPA, which is interpretive phenomenological analysis, which looks at the lived experience. So really down to every word a woman says, within the sentence she says, and within the paragraph and the whole interview. So I was seeking this in-depth experience of using TENS for pain control in labour and birth. And the analysis of the verbatim transcripts did take quite a lot of time, but it was done by hand. It wasn't done using a computer program. I literally read and reread all of the phrases and expressions that the women used, and I do have some word-for-word quotes for you. And I went back to the participants. So after I'd interviewed them and the interviews were transcribed, I went back with a hard copy to show them. In those days, we weren't using computers quite as much. And so if they wanted me to change anything, I would. And in fact, there was very little to be changed, which was great. So from the research, these themes developed, and I had a superordinate theme, which I'll talk to you about shortly. And I also had 5 other themes, and within them, sub-themes. So things that women, was really important to women and their partners about the TENS. After that, I did a further literature review to look at things like knowledge with TENS. Women really wanted to know detail. So I reviewed the literature on that and the superordinate theme, which was control. So when I looked at what was coming through with these interviews, I really wanted to focus on each person and what they were saying. And then I could actually make claims for the larger group when more women said the same thing over and over again. And finally, my study can't be generalizable to every woman. However, it is transferable to similar groups of women using TENS. So this slide shows you my themes. And if you see the diagram on the left, which I'd put together, the superordinate theme was control. It was so important for women to be in control of their labour and their birth and everything that happened around this. So it became a massive theme, and I was hearing it over and over again. So for my study that started with TENS in the centre of the work, suddenly this theme, a superordinate theme of control was there. It was so important. And you'll see that on the right hand side in the table, that theme was split into three sections. So internal control of self, women wanted to be really in control of what they were doing in their labour and birth. And out of the 20 women, 18 women talked about that. So it was a really, really key theme. Then external control of others. Women were wanting to control their surroundings, what their partner was doing, what the midwives were doing. Not as many, so 7 out of 20 women talked about that, but nevertheless still very important. And then finally, control of the TENS machine. That was absolutely key. And one woman I can remember, her quote was, "It was my control box. It was my way of controlling my labour," which really, came to me and said it was absolutely so important for that woman to be able to do that. So obviously when designing TENS machines, we need to be really, really mindful. And, as I've used Mama TENS in TensCare from TensCare for a long time, it was really good and very simple to operate. So absolutely key there. So the other 5 themes that sit around control, the first one was supporting the use of TENS. It was so important for midwives to support women antenatally. So to talk about TENS and prepare them for labour and for the choices they've got for pain relief. And many women don't want to use pethidine or have an epidural or any of the drugs that are offered. And the midwife support in labour was absolutely key. So for that midwife to be supportive of the woman using TENS, not to say, well, why don't we try turning it off for a while and see what happens, which did actually get quoted in my study. So one midwife had said this to a lady, and we don't need that. We absolutely need the midwives to support those women with what they want to do. And then the third part of that was partner support. So absolutely key for those women. 17 out of 20 women talked about their partner having knowledge of the TENS. So for me, when I'm teaching antenatal classes, I try the TENS on mums and partners, only on their arm, but I absolutely let them feel what TENS is like. I show them TENS machines and pictures of where to place the TENS. And the partners are actually key. They really support mums and encourage them to hire or buy their TENS machines. So a lot of work needs to be done really around partner support. And you can see, as I say, 85% of women talked about the role of their partner in their birth. So the next theme is normalising labour and birth. Women want to be mobile and they want drug-free pain relief. Not all women, but the women that I interviewed, they absolutely did. It was really important to them. And at the moment, I'm doing some work on safety in maternity. And following birth, a lot of women that have had sedation can't care for their babies properly. And they're absolutely mindful of that. So they want to talk about what else can they have. They don't all want to be sedated. They want to be awake and able to care for their babies afterwards. So the third theme, needing to know, 19 out of 20 women really wanted to know the detail of TENS, how it worked, and the very in-depth sort of knowledge. So it may well again be shared that when TENS information is designed, that we really do go into depth. Women want to know a lot more now than they ever used to. And practicalities of TENS was really important. So, being able to put the TENS into their pocket, or to have be able to clip it on their trousers, or to have a neck strap, and making sure the leads aren't too long. So, for instance, if they want to get up and move around, that the leads don't get caught, and that the pads stick really, really well. And again, TensCare has provided that, which is fantastic. But 100% of women talk about the practicalities, so that's really key. Then the distraction of TENS from the pain. Again, the TENS gave a lot of women a feeling of security, which was fantastic. They really wanted to have something to hold and something to control whilst they were in labour. And a lot of women did find that they were distracted by the pulsing of the TENS or having it on continuous. So, 60% of those women really felt there was a distraction element. And the physical sensation was so important to them, what this felt like. And many of my women prefer the continuous mode rather than the pulsing. So one of the reasons that TensCare has been so fantastic is in the C mode, that was really, really more comfortable for so many women. So important that that's there. And then theme 5 was trusting in TENS. Women needed to believe in TENS and have confidence in it. So particularly at my antenatal classes, obviously I talk about it, but when a woman comes for an antenatal clinic appointment, I'll show them the TENS, and at 37 weeks, we put the TENS on and they go home wearing their TENS. So I've taught them through how to put it on, how it feels, and they've actually tried it before labour. That's so important, not to just have it in a bag ready for labour. So important to try it before. So some of these areas might be useful for when you're designing TENS machines to think about, what women really need and their partners need. So for this slide, this was my research where I started with TENS in the centre of my research. And as you can see now, TENS is around the outside. This is how I decided to display my findings for my research and all of the themes. And that big element of control sits in the middle. It's absolutely key, and I think a huge sort of seller to make sure that TENS, women use TENS and they know that they can have control with that. So all of the themes that I've just talked about sit around this circle, and I think that displays it really, really well. Please feel free to use any of these themes because they're absolutely written up, in the research, and is so key to our ladies. So when I talk about my findings, my research is available. There's a lot of findings, but these key phrases I think are helpful. So by uncovering a group of women's in-depth experiences of using TENS for pain control in labour and birth, this study filled the gap in the knowledge. So, some qualitative knowledge out there for those women. In addition, the findings suggest that TENS was identified as an enabling mechanism. So it made it possible for those women to be in control. That's really what that means. Of a normal birth, and that's what a lot of women want. And women were able to maintain their independence, make decisions, and actively take part in their pain control using TENS, which was fantastic. So I made recommendations for a midwifery practice, for education, educating the women and the midwives, and for future research to be done. So I then committed to a whole year of midwifery education, and every midwife within our organisation had an hour on TENS in their mandatory training, which they were all really, really pleased to have, and increased our use of TENS in our trust. So going on to section 2 of the TENS in clinical practice, I've used TENS for 35, nearly 36 years now. So as a student midwife, the first labour I saw was at home. I had 3 home births in 1 week. I was really lucky. And all of those women used TENS. We had a local guy that designed TENS machines. And the machine was very big. It was very silver and shiny, quite big to transport. But those women, most of the women used TENS. They might have used some gas and air, some Entonox, towards the end of their birth. But apart from that, they used the TENS and very little else. So the fact that TENS was local was really good for those women. So easy access to hire or buy a TENS machine is really, really key. The chap that designed this TENS machine, I then went on and designed a much smaller slimmer TENS machine with him. We looked at length of leads, size of pads and everything that we really needed. And then I supported him and the women with making sure that the TENS machine was there and available. And I then set up a hiring scheme within the hospitals so that women knew more about TENS. So my experience in community and home births and later managing a birth centre is really key. So the midwives absolutely need to know need to know the detail of the TENS machines and how it works, to impart that knowledge over to the women, and then to give them the opportunity to use TENS for pain relief in labour and birth and afterwards. So from my use of TENS, I started lecturing on TENS at the university, particularly Southampton, which is local to us. And I had a complete commitment to those women to try and promote normal birth. So for me, TENS was a big part of that. And as I say, I set up TENS hiring schemes in our acute units. That continues now with Mama TENS. And I support staff and women in the use of TENS if there are any queries. So I've been given a TENS expert role for our trust. So for my own caseload of women, which I've had around 80, 90 women a year up to recently, I have my own supply of TENS machines. So 90% of my women use TENS in labour, which is a huge amount. But if they tried it and didn't like it or didn't like the feel of it, obviously we took it off, but most of them kept it on, and they were real advocates. I believed in TENS personally, and I think that makes a huge difference, but actually transferring that knowledge to other midwives to support them is so important. And women can use TENS in different ways that I'll go on to in a short while. But as I say, at the birth classes, it's so important that midwives have a TENS machine to show women and to explain what TENS does. Absolutely key with our antenatal teaching. And I've tried to disseminate my knowledge as much as I can with regard to my research and my use of TENS for labour and birth. And actually TensCare have supported me for many, many years. And one of the findings from my research was that women liked the continuous mode, so the C mode that was within TensCare, and other machines at that time didn't have this option. I'm not sure now, as we're still using TensCare, Mama TENS, but maybe they do. And I've recently had a lady contact me about my research thesis, and she's read all 70,000 words of it and rang me to say thank you. She said it was so refreshing to see so much support for something that she wanted to use in labour. So really felt good. So ways of using TENS. Unfortunately, we can't advocate women using TENS before 37 weeks of pregnancy, because 37 weeks is still classified as normal. Anytime from 37 onwards is for normal birth and normal cut-off point. However, women have taken their own responsibility, particularly if they've had backache or any back injury that they then suffered pain throughout labour, throughout pregnancy, prior to labour, and they took their own responsibility to put their TENS on. And the earliest I've had is a lady at 12 weeks pregnant, and she used the TENS all the way through because she was in so much pain with her back. And she said without the TENS, she absolutely, couldn't have managed. So for her, it was absolutely key, and it showed that there are other uses for TENS. Women were very vocal in my study, and they said that one particular lady said that gas and air, so Entonox, made her feel quite sick. So she really emphasised that she took off that gas and air, put the gas and air down, and she racked her TENS machine up really quickly. And she said this was amazing. It was absolutely the thing to do. So I think it's about having an open mind and going with women about how they want to use TENS in labour. We know that TENS increases endorphins and enkephalins. So for many of my women, they use TENS every day in the later part of their pregnancy from around 38 weeks. So it was deemed safe to use for at least 2 hours. And often after that week, 10 days, they started their labour. Many women didn't go overdue and they were, trialing this. So I'd love to complete some more research or do some more research on this. And there's a reference by Wang in 2007, and he looked at this as a form or a way of TENS being used to induce labour naturally. And I really think that there is some work to be done there, absolutely, because as I say, many of my caseload of women didn't go overdue. They used TENS, they got used to it, and they got used to the machine. And if it produced their more endorphins, maybe that's what triggered labour. It's very hard to prove these things, but if women use it and they find it that helpful and it decreases our induction of labour rate, then it's really important to try. So many women in the latent phase of labour, so that's sort of that sort of last part of labour, or when labour doesn't start properly. So some women can have a long period when labour isn't necessarily starting. As in their cervix isn't dilating, and they have this big build-up, which for some women can be 2 or 3 days. And they found that TENS has absolutely supported them, because they often will come into the hospital, they're not in proper labour, so they're sent home, and things like paracetamol are used, but TENS was absolutely key for so many women with that until they got into established labour. Really important. So we advocate putting TENS on as early in labour as we can. So when we have the first signs of labour, and I often have to tell women that TENS isn't going to stop their labour, so they need to get it on early. However, I have used it on several women that have had a very rapid labour. And what we've done is we've put the TENS on as soon as we can, and we've actually cranked up or increased the TENS, the frequency and the intensity as quickly as possible, and to increase that endorphin and enkephalin release. And actually those women have said that the TENS was so valuable to use it like that. Really, really important. So it's not just about those longer labours where women can get it on early. If their labour is rapid, then I really still advocate that women need to try it. So other ways of using it. So I think we need to be very open about using TENS. It's not just for labour. So important not to take it off. And I've seen some midwives do this, that they've got the baby's been born and they take the TENS off. However, it can be really, really helpful afterwards, particularly if a woman's needing to have stitches or something like that, even delivering the placenta. It's really important not to take something off that a woman's been used to control the whole of her labour and birth. And I think that midwives need to ensure that they understand that women don't just want it removed straight away. Sometimes women felt when I talked to them that during the actual birth, so as the baby was being born in that second stage, that they didn't want to feel the pulsing of the TENS. They wanted to put it on continuous mode. It felt much more comfortable, and they didn't want to use the boost. They wanted to leave the TENS on continuous mode and not pulsing. And actually they found that was much more comfortable. So something to think about. Also, some ladies like to involve their partners. So the partner actually controlled the TENS and turned it up or down or pressed the boost mode, but under the direction of the woman. So that was really quite helpful. And I think it involved the partners much more in labour doing this. So, quite important to be open about that. I've always said that the woman should control it herself, because she's feeling that pain and what level she wants to be on and when she needs to press the boost button. However, involving the partner is really important. So for pain relief postnatally, for backache and after pains, for those women that have had lots of babies, they have quite severe after pains, and I think it can be really useful for that as well. And post-cesarean section, as I've said before, is really helpful. Some women can't take pain relief, other forms of pain relief in the form of drugs, so they've opted to use their TENS for this, and they place the pads each side of the wound, so one pair of pads one side and one the other, not touching the scar or the stitches, but actually this has worked really well for lots of women. Also, with safety, as I mentioned before, those women can remain really alert because they're not having drugs for their pain relief, and so it's not making them sleepy. And also, women are often exhausted afterwards, so the combination of being exhausted after a birth and having pain relief can be quite unsafe really for mum and baby. So I think TENS has a place there, certainly to be considered. So thinking about the research and the women, I've looked after lots of women with TENS, and I absolutely would say that it's really important and can be really used in so many different ways. And it's key to educate the midwives so that they have a good knowledge to support their mums antenatally and when they go in with them in labour. So really helpful. So that's the end of the presentation from me. Now my whole research is available, as I say, if you search Cindy Shawley and TENS, but I understand we can have some question and answer sessions. But if also my email's there and my phone number, so if you would like to contact me, then I'm absolutely happy for that as well.
Thank you very much, Cindy. I'm just bringing everybody back to the room so we can have a quick chat. Bear just with me, I just need one more minute and everyone should be in here. I know there were a few people that actually didn't join Zoom but watched us on YouTube. So I don't know if I'm sure they still can hear us. So if you have questions, those that watch YouTube, I think you can leave your questions in comments or send them to us directly later, and everything will be answered. And then I think that's everyone. I can see there are a few questions in the Q&A chat. There's one from Andrew, one from two from Job. Job, I don't know, would you like to ask your question yourself directly, or?
I guess I'll ask mine first then, Cindy.
Hi, Andrew.
Following your stuff for a long time, and it's really been inspirational. Thank you very much. The thing that's been really frustrating me is the NICE guidance.
Yeah.
Any comments on how we respond to that? Because you're talking about encouraging midwives, but it's quite difficult to do it when NICE tells them not to. Yeah,
I completely agree. So I was trying to find the time, obviously, but I would really like to challenge the NICE guidelines, because they don't recommend women to use it. It's really hard, but I think it's because...
Is it British? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's National Institute
based on evidence from before 2005.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I would love to, with some help would be fantastic, to challenge NICE guidelines, because the panel that made that decision, there wasn't a midwife on it, there wasn't an obstetrician, and I feel really frustrated that they've made those recommendations. And I'm just really lucky, I guess, that our trust even though they will look at NICE guidelines for most of their obstetric guidance, they actually waiver it because I'm there saying, look at this, this is, you know, this, you need to take notice of this. More than happy to challenge that if anybody would like to support me doing that, because it's something I've always wanted to do. Absolutely don't agree with how they've done it and what they've said.
I think Andrew's always for a challenge.
Yeah.
Since 2011, there have been about 10 or 15 papers on TENS in labour, all with positive results. And NICE just don't even open it as a topic for discussion when they do reviews, and it's really upsetting. So can I come back to you next time?
Yeah, well, it would be fantastic, because I think that we could, you know, there's been much more research obviously since mine, but actually, you know, the things that those women had said, they need to take that into consideration. Yeah. And yeah, I would love to find the time to do that. I guess with some support and a group of people, we could definitely do it.
Yeah.
Good.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Okay, my question, it was why is it not advised earlier than 37 weeks? Is there also with this NICE guidelines, probably?
The Royal College of Midwives, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the problem is that anything before 37 is called early labour or premature labour, and that we don't have any research to say that TENS won't start labour, and ethically we can't ask women earlier than that to join a study, and that's is so sticky. But I've had so many women that have used it with their own responsibility, including 2 obstetric consultants in our unit. They use TENS at 20 weeks onwards, and so they're in complete agreement. There's not been one person that I know of that labour has started, but ethically to try and have a group of women to prove that's really difficult.
I think it was the Royal College of Midwives, wasn't it? Got worried about professional liability, and they thought if midwives were recommending it, they wouldn't have a defence because there wasn't any research, you know, either way. So they just took the conservative, safe measure and said don't use it. Yeah.
We do that with most things, to be honest. It's really hard, but in midwifery we have to have this cut off, and that's why I've been lucky in being able to use it by people taking their own responsibility. Yeah. So that's really helped.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is one more question in the chat as well that just came, and it says the following: TENS got approval for all indications that just shown on the way of using TENS slide. I guess that's the slide that you've shown, Cindy, at the very beginning of your presentation. Sorry, I think there was a bit of a sound issue. I suppose the answer to this is yes, since it has been shown on the slide. Then our machines, actually, we don't really promote our machines yet for all the applications, but we do tell our customers that actually TENS machine and our maternity TENS machine can be used for all those yes, indications.
Most of mine, sorry, I was going to say most of mine were from practice. So I discovered these things from, you know, just trying it and you know, encouraging women, and they've just, you know, some women have said, well, actually, I've done this, this, and this. So it's them that's actually tried to do some of these things, and you know, very strongly. The drug sort of postnatal things come in now with cesareans, and that's a real interesting one that could be taken forward. I mean, we've had incidents of babies obstructing their airway when babies haven't been held properly from mums being really exhausted and have had drugs. So that's I'm actually working on that at the moment. I'm producing sort of posters about holding babies and things, which has just gone onto a safety platform. But it occurred to me when I was preparing the work for this webinar that actually TENS could be really supportive there. So I'm going to put something out this week within our trust for us to consider TENS instead of drugs postnatally.
There's quite a few papers now on that as well, recent ones on episiotomy and postpartum and post-cesarean. Yeah.
I had one more question, if it's possible. You compare it with drugs, with pain relief from drugs. how is it? How do you compare it with women who don't use anything?
I guess, yes. I mean, not many women don't use anything, but some
we are
do.
tough in Holland.
Yeah. Some do.
The ladies, anyway. Some do manage to deliver, particularly if they have a rapid birth without anything. But yeah, I think also sometimes women have had a labour before and they've used drugs, and then they've used the TENS and they felt much more with it, much more in control, which is where, you know, that whole big theme of control came from. So I think sometimes if they've had different labours and used different things themselves, that's where they've compared it to drugs. I mean, the thing with TENS, it advocates mobility and, you know, getting into whatever positions women want to in labour and birth, and that's really important, which you can't do if you have an epidural, for instance. You know, you can't be mobile. Well, we can't in the UK.
Sure. Jodie, do you, from your experience already with the maternity TENS in Australia, do you have any, I would say, weird questions from your customers maybe that you'd like to ask today? Are you still muted? Jodie, you're muted. Jodie, you're muted. We
can't hear you.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, we have a lot of people that do ring up asking if they can use the devices before the 37 weeks, which of course we reiterate that they cannot do that. Yeah, so that's probably our biggest thing. And we do have on occasions people that want to purchase them as they're literally going into labour, and we've had a few occasions where we've had to put the device in a taxi or drive it to a hospital and all that type of thing. So preparation's not very good, but yeah, but certainly for us, it's becoming a very popular product in Australia. I think people are starting to get on board with it. I'm seeing on social media a lot of influencers are using the devices now. So yeah, really good product for us.
Do you have any contact with the midwives, Jodie, so that you can, you know, get them to do the antenatal education type bit about TENS?
Yeah, I have contacts at our major hospital, our Royal Women's Hospital. So I've done presentations in hospitals and also in regional areas as well. So yeah, we definitely have the midwives on board with us.
Really good to know. I mean, for me, a big thing was the women practicing beforehand, you know, and I was really keen on that research that showed, well, for my women, not many of them went overdue. So I'd definitely love to do some more research on inducing labour with using TENS naturally rather than having a hospital induction of labour. So that's something good to think about.
That's probably the one thing that we've never actually
looked at,
said about our products actually, but that does make sense. And then if you can really use something that's natural, that would be a preferred way. There's one more question, but I think it's more to Andrew really. If there is enough research to support using a TENS machine or maternity TENS after the C-section to get the FDA approval. I think FDA is actually a bit of a...
After C-section, no, that's a good point. Yeah, probably is. Yeah, before delivery, FDA does have a blanket ban, but after delivery, post-operative pain relief, we can use the standard TENS FDA. Yeah, so we could promote it for that. Yeah.
I'm certainly going to take that forward again in my unit, because problem is staff change, and you know, we've got a lot of new staff. And somebody actually said to me the other day, oh, can you start to do more TENS sessions? And I suddenly realized that I hadn't done any recently. But I think if you get midwives on side, you know, with that, particularly for us, because our midwives run all of mainly our postnatal wards. The doctors do come round, but they don't have a massive input as they do in other you know, other countries. So I think getting them on board probably would help as well, but the midwives definitely. So yeah, you know, that would be good.
I took on board your mentioning the partners should be involved as well, because I'm thinking we could actually promote it to men who care for their wives as a sort of to get them involved. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. This has just come to my mind. I don't know. We're still right for time. I don't know if have you heard of the Dad Pad?
No.
No. So very quickly, it's a really amazing resource run, designed by a dad called Julian Bose. We have a Dad Pad app for all of our areas, so all of our hospitals, and I'm the person that updates the app. But also we have a hard copy Dad Pad, so it's free to download on your phone. So if you download Dad Pad, there's a picture of a man holding a baby with tattooed arms. You'll sort of recognise it. That's brilliant. The one. Yeah. That's really a place to go to put your information. Anything for dads. Mums read it as well, actually, but really good stuff there. So yeah, something new that we've done.
Good. Any more questions?
It's not a question, Cindy. It's just probably if you have any ideas of how we can actually introduce that to Latin American countries. To be honest, that's a territory that is a taboo. It's quite like well known that TENS is not something that will affect the baby. For European countries probably, but in Latin America it's a taboo. They feel like, oh no, I will not do that. They don't have midwives. It's more like gynecologists, or even they have like the cesarean. Sorry, it's not like natural labor. So I'm not sure if you have any ideas how we can actually introduce that subject in those countries.
Can you get in to speak to the doctors or the people that are at the births?
The distributors try to approach to them, and they do understand that, but it's very difficult to pass that message to the patient.
What about pregnancy classes, preparation classes? Who takes those? I mean, our midwives take ours, so we're lucky we can talk about TENS and show them. But what about, do you have that sort of thing?
It's not very popular, if I'm honest. It's becoming more about like physiotherapists who talk about like pelvic floor muscles and as well like preventing previous pregnancy or afterwards. So it's kind of new. It's becoming more popular on social media, but it's still very much in early stages.
Is it an idea to make e-learnings for the mothers with the TensCare?
That's something that we can explore. Yeah, that's a great idea.
That might be quite helpful. I think it's actually visually getting it out to those mums to show them what it does, and to show them that actually, you know, the TENS pads just go onto the skin. They're not, I think until some mums see it, they don't realise that it's just a small electrical current going to those, you know, nerve endings in the skin. I think seeing it might really help. So perhaps online, something online would be good if they can have access to that. You know, but I would say anyone that does baby classes, that type of thing, and almost finding a key consultant. I had one consultant who listened to everything I said because it was doctoral research, and he took it on board for the rest of the trust, which was great. You know, I met him in the library while I was doing my research, and he got interested. And that's the key thing. If you can find one person, you know, in each place and really try and convert them or give them that information, that might be helpful.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think if there are no more questions, I just wanted to say thank you very much, Cindy, to you for the preparation and for sharing your findings in your many years research and sharing your experience, personal experience as well. I hope we will see you on Wednesday again, and there'll be another group of people that probably will come with another set of questions for you. Thank you very much for everyone who joined us today, and then there'll be another session in 3 minutes time.
Could I just ask Andrew quickly? Andrew, could I just ask if there's some research that you really value from sort of since I did mine, any qualitative research be really helpful, you know, to know any of those key pieces, particularly to look at for NICE, challenging our guidelines.
Okay,
Great.
I'll send that to you.
Brilliant.
We have to do a sort of clinical evaluation all the time now, so we have to keep records of all the new papers, so we should have everything.
Oh, that'd be brilliant. Well, hopefully some of it's been helpful to share, you know, my ways of working with TENS and my research, and, you know, go forward with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's really appreciated. Thank you. That's good.
All right.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much. Thank you. See you in a different link.
Okay.
Thank you, Cindy. You have a